Welcome, Colts Nation, to Colts Law. I'm Lawrence Owen, your host, and today we have a great topic with a great guest. Question: with this current salary cap issue, there's going to be a lot of cap casualties. Will Chris Ballard actually be really high end on going after some of these casualties rather than going after big names? We'll find out in just a moment.
All right. So I guess now you understand what the plan was.
Absolutely. At Colts Law, we talk Indianapolis Colts football.
We're going to stick to what we know, fundamentals and technique, 1% better every day.
What's going on, everybody? I am back, and today I have a very special guest with me, someone who doesn't always agree with me, but we agree with a few things here and there about the Indianapolis Colts. He's a guy who does a lot of film work, especially when it comes to college. But he also, just like Chris Ballard and everybody else, he looks at the guys that are currently in the NFL that, the Colts might actually be interested in. I want to welcome today Zach Hicks from Stampede Blue and Bleavin Colts podcast. Zach, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bud. And, when it comes to us not agreeing with each other all the time, that's the beauty of it. I will give you credit, man. I'll always give you credit. You stand by what your opinion is. And much like myself and to the chagrin of maybe some other people, but, in a sports world where it's so copy and paste with everybody else, the fact that you're able to stand by your opinion, it pisses me off sometimes, but we it's the joy of doing this. It's always better to be original than it is to be copy and paste. So the disagreements are good, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because, if everybody had the exact same opinions and just folded every time someone else said otherwise, then this would be a really boring world and everybody would think the exact same. Come on, man. Those of us who actually watch film or, kind of understand how football works, we have an opinion on something for a reason. And we could sit there and have a decent, reasonable conversation about it without blowing up and getting angry with each other. Like I've seen a lot of people do. A lot of people. But, I get you. I've seen some of your arguments and go, well, I can kind of see where he's coming from, but at the same time, my goodness, man, what about this? And I'm sure it's vice versa.
Yep.
So, but that's why I got you on here, because I don't want everybody just, looking at my own opinion. That's why I bring people in here, guys like yourself, guys like Kevin Bowen or Philip Wilson a couple weeks ago. Philip B. Wilson, I'm sorry. He was very intricate on making sure the B was in there, which is fine by me. That's what he wants, then that's what he gets, because he's been doing this for a very long time. So before I start getting into what we actually, first off, everybody in the chat, I'm just to let you know, I will get to the chat after we kind of get through our topic a little bit. And I understand there's going to be a ton of people in the chat. There's going to be a lot of questions. Obviously, the super chat questions will get answered first. So I'll just let you know that. And then, of course, my regulars will also get the second hand on that. So before I get in, I posted a question to Twitter a couple days ago. Let it run for a couple days so I could get enough votes on there. And it was basically, here we go. It was, as we see, what is your number one priority this free agency for the Colts? Now, free agency only. We're not talking about draft. Where do we want to spend our number one priority free agency? I wanted to see where Colts fans stand on that. And I see that pass rusher sitting number one at almost 63%, with left tackle sitting at number two. And then as you see what you got here from that graph of the voting of that poll, where would you do you agree with how Colts fans generally feel, or do you feel as though they may have something a little backwards?
No, I think the ranking there is pretty accurate. Edge rusher I think is by far and away the highest need for this team. I know a lot of people are going to say left tackle, which obviously I think that's the second biggest need. But when you look at left tackle, you can kind of compare it to how Braden Smith was at right tackle in 2018. Braden Smith was not at the level he's at now. He was a transitioning from guard, not a great tackle, but they gave a lot of help. They got rid of the ball quick. And the Colts gave up the least amount of sacks in football. When you have an offensive line where you have four really good offensive linemen, that fifth one, obviously you want to be good as well, but it doesn't need to be up there. We saw with Jared Valdir last year, came in off the street and looked good for 2.5, 3 games. So I think edge rusher is the biggest thing. Justin Houston had a lot of sacks, but didn't have very many pressures or hits or hurries or anything like that. It's a very, very inconsistent season for him. And Danico Autry, I think with the same way, was kind of like, flash in a pan, had a couple good games, couple bad games. They really need a guy who can get some consistent pressure. So I think edge rusher is by far and away number 1. Left tackle, I'd still keep it number 2, though, because you need to have somebody there. And then wide receiver, I think at 3 is good as well, because you just need more playmakers in this offense, especially where, this isn't a slight on Carson Wentz, but you just need to get him more playmakers. You need to make everything around him as easy as possible, because, he's coming off a couple of seasons that were not where you want him to be at. So getting him as many playmakers as possible, I think is just the smart way to go here. So yeah, the way that's ranked right there from how the Colts fans voted, I think I voted for pass rusher anyway in this one. So yeah, the way it's ranked there, I completely agree with.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they're like, you got to have a top end, the guys that are going for like the Trent Williams and stuff like that, they say we need to grab guys like that. I think they're kind of looking at when Anthony Costanzo went down last season and you saw like LaRaven Clark or Chaz Green fill in on those spots. You can't look at that. Those are very bad examples. Okay. These are not starting quality tackles that came in replacement of Anthony Costanzo. When you get an average starting tackle, even at left tackle, which is by far and away the most important, I think, position on that offensive line, obviously, because you want to protect the quarterback's blind side. But if you get an average one, like you say, and he's playing beside Quentin Nelson, who's good enough and has his head on a swivel often enough to be able to give a hand when he needs it on the inside, those average tackles could be more kind of worried about the speed rush on the outside, not have to worry about as much about the inside move, because as we saw, even if you're a very solid pass rusher, like, I don't know, Melvin Ingram, Quentin Nelson come in and go ahead and take care of that. Right?
Yeah, I think the Colts offensive system is also beneficial for offensive line play. Jacoby Brissett was a bad example because he held on the ball for the longest in the NFL in 2019. But back in 2018 with Andrew Luck, the Colts were the least amount of sacks allowed in the league. This past year, they were second least in the NFL. I'm not saying that just because of the system that they're always going to be in that top 15 or, like that top 10 or whatever in terms of that. But, the system is predicated on getting that ball out quick. So as long as Carson Wentz is following the system and getting the ball out quick, that left tackle when it comes to pass pro is not a super, super important. It's important. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not trying to completely downplay this position. I'm a big offensive line guy. I think left tackle is an important position, but it doesn't need to be something that's higher than pass rusher, when for most of the year the pass rush was dead. And that's the only time that the Colts defense really got shredded last year, is when the pass rush wasn't getting home. We saw it against the Bills in the playoffs. There were just a lot of instances where those guys were just not getting any pressure. And Buckner was, getting those double teams inside. So yeah, I think getting that edge rusher is super, super important. And then, getting a viable option at left tackle, it doesn't need to be a Trent Williams. You can get Riley Reif or Riley Reif. I wish I knew how to say his name. Do you know how to say his name?
No.
Okay. I'm going to say Riley Reif is what I'm going to just call him from now on. If it's wrong, whatever. He's not listening, hopefully. But Riley Reif, even if you want to go lower than that, I like Roderick Johnson out of Houston. A lot of these guys I think can just be adequate starters, because that's all you really need. And then take a guy in the middle rounds or take a guy in the first round even and develop them. I don't think you need to pay big for that position, especially when you're going to be paying the highest salary in the NFL across your offensive line going forward, no matter who you sign at left tackle, because they're going to be paying nearly $20 million a year to Quentin and Braden Smith coming up, and Brian Kelly's already the highest paid center in football. So you got to go cheap at left tackle, especially going in the future. I think get a young guy, develop him, get a viable option to start at left tackle for this next year. And I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, my argument on that, against signing guys like Trent Williams or something like that at that high, if you get Quentin Nelson, it's probably 20 mil. I'm looking at Braden Smith somewhere around 12 mil, most likely, because right tackle is also important. You're looking at around $70 million a year on your offensive line at that point. If you sign a $20 million Trent Williams, and that's over a third of the team cap, just on the offensive line. And what that would do was completely debilitate the rest of the team, right? You wouldn't be able to go out and get a good pass rusher or a decent cornerback or a top end wide receiver or something like that. So, I don't want to debilitate another position, especially the defense, considering pass rush, in my opinion, is the most important part of Matt Eberflus's zone scheme. If you cannot get pass rush, that zone scheme will get eaten up all day, every day. And so, but if you get pass rush, that's where you start to see a lot of turnovers, a lot of batted balls, a lot of things of that nature. So, pass rush is by and far, especially with both defensive ends being free agents this year, it's by and far, in my opinion, the most important position. So going into this 2021 NFL free agency, there's a COVID cap hit, and it's affecting a lot of NFL teams. There's only 7 teams currently with over $30 million in cap space. There's 7 teams in the red right now. And the rest are somewhere between $1 and $20 million, which is that shows a lot of low cap space. So you're seeing a lot of teams out there that are kind of just frantically really releasing players to make cap space. And do you think that Chris Ballard is really hurriedly, him and his guys, adjusting his free agency board currently, watching very, very closely? Do you think he's going to be primed to grab more into the released players over the beginning free agency guys?
Yeah, no, I certainly think that's going to be an area. He likes to attack that spot. He's done it in years past. We saw Justin Houston was that way. A player who was cut a little bit into free agency, I believe, and then he signed Justin Houston. Xavier Rhodes was a cut player that they signed this past year. So 2 of his most successful signings in his career have been off of players who were cut. So yeah, he definitely keeps an eye on that. I know that some people have been hinting at Ballard potentially trying to play the comp pick game. And if you're going to play the comp pick game, you want to sign guys who are cut because they don't affect, your comp formula. So I think a lot of that makes sense. And also, some of the guys that we've seen release these last couple of days, you can sign them right now. You can talk to them right now even. So even if they don't get signed before Monday when free agency starts, you can already kind of have that base with them, what your offer might be to them. So you just get that head start on it. So I think a lot of that makes sense for Ballard to pursue those guys. And like you said, it's a year where we are getting more guys released than normal. Riley Reef, for example, maybe in years past would be a restructured candidate, or he'd be a guy who they just keep for another year at that $11 million. Instead, they had to cut him because they had to get into the green. Those type of guys are typically not available. So yeah, we could definitely see more, I won't say high quality guys, but quality guys hitting this market through cuts. And I think Chris Ballard is going to be pretty privy to sign a good bit of them this year.
Is there any current cuts that you have noticed over the past couple weeks that when they happened, you were like, oh my, I think that's a top target right there for Ballard?
Yeah, there were 3 of them. They actually all happened. They all got announced the other day. Riley Reef is one I've mentioned a couple times here. I think that one just makes a ton of sense because say his market doesn't go the way he expects, because if you're a veteran tackle, you want to get a couple years. You don't want to get a 1-year deal typically. But if he doesn't get a couple-year deal at a salary that he wants, a smart thing for him would be, okay, I'm going to take this 1-year deal, go to this offense that is a quick offense. They get the ball out quick. I get to play next to Quentin Nelson. They have a top-tier running back in the backfield. I mean, you can basically hit next year's free agency after that big TV deal happens and have on your resume, we had a top rushing offense. I only gave up 1 or 2 sacks, whatever it is. So I think he's a guy who makes a ton of sense in terms of like, hey, his market doesn't go the way that he wants. Take that 1-year deal with the Colts and then hit that market next year. And then 2 other guys actually both released by the Bills, Quentin Jefferson, defensive lineman, kind of a lot like Denico Autry when the Colts first signed him. A big, lengthy guy who can play inside or out. The Bills kind of used him as like a shade technique and nose tackle a lot last year, even though he's only like 290 pounds or like 285, I think. So it was a little weird. That was really small player that they put on the inside there. But I believe he was 8th in pass rush win rate, according to ESPN this past year among defensive linemen this year. Had a really good season despite the stats not super backing that up. But he's a player who I think is really interesting. And also Ed Dodds was part of drafting him in Seattle in the 5th round back in 2016. The other one would be John Brown from the Bills. John Brown, I think, makes a ton of sense. The areas that he wins, kind of like what he said on the radio the other day, took the words right out of my mouth as my article posted about him, is, the way he wins are those deep crossers, vertical routes, and those quick screens. That's exactly how the Colts have used T.Y. Hilton under Frank Reich the last couple of years. And honestly, I think at this point, John Brown probably has more juice than T.Y., where T.Y. is a better route runner. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever. T.Y. has really smooth feet. It's a really underrated aspect of his game. But I think Brown has more juice, and I think he can win on those crossers a little easier than what Hilton could these last couple of years, even though I think Hilton overall is a better receiver. So I think if Hilton does get above what the Colts want to pay, maybe it's 10, 11, 12 million a year from another team. If you can get John Brown for maybe 7, 8, or 9, I think that's an overall win. So those 3 guys, the second they were cut, all got my interest up, especially Quentin Jefferson with that Ed Dodds connection. I think I expected them to go after him last year, but maybe because they had Denico Autry, they didn't see the fit there. Now with Autry potentially leaving in free agency, you can bring Jefferson in to fill that spot. And it's like, it's kind of like replacing the same player, but with a younger guy.
Okay. It's interesting with the John Brown because his most common player comp when he was coming into the draft was actually T.Y. Hilton. So that makes a lot of sense if T.Y.'s not, come back because he's ring chasing or something. I would not blame T.Y. for ring chasing if he doesn't believe in Carson Wentz. I have no issue with that. I would support him. I don't know if I'd be overly excited if he went to the Bucks with Brady, but it is what it is. When it comes to cornerbacks, Ballard has shown, honestly, I think it's Eberflus. His scheme shows that you could go grab some guys and they can legitimately, make their career again better here in Indy if you've already shown that you've had that before because of how easy it is to play zone as opposed to man so much. Some of these guys out there that have had some down years, like, what was one of those guys that I saw? Shaquille Griffin. Would you think that he would be a guy that has the potential to make a bounce back year if he came over to the Colts, or is there a cornerback in that kind of similar range of Xavier Rhodes that you feel like could come in to Indy and have a bounce back year because of the style that Matt Eberflus runs?
Yeah, so speaking on Shaq Griffin, I know the Colts are going to be interested in him. That's one I feel confident. I don't report much. I hope you guys don't confuse me for being a insider or reporter. That's not my thing. I like to give analysis. But over the years, I've had some connections with some agents and some other people. I do know that the Colts and Chris Ballard do like Shaq Griffin, but his market's projected to be around like 14 to 16 a year. Which I don't know. I don't think Ballard's going to go that high. Just that's my personal thing. I don't think he's going to go that high for him. But I think Griffin would fit perfect in this defense. Super athletic guy, has great ball skills. You can kind of take some of the responsibilities off his plate by putting him in this defense, where I think he got into some issues over the last couple of years with Seattle, where I just haven't asked to do too much, especially in terms of pattern matching, which, the Colts do some pattern match, but it's not at the level that the Seahawks do. So I think he could really exceed in this one. But I think one guy who I've kind of thrown out a couple times, and I don't think he'd be their only move at corner if they did go after him, because I think you would just need more at that point. But a guy who makes a lot of sense would actually be Kevin King from Green Bay. And I know the chat might kill me for this, because the last time we saw Kevin King, he was getting toasted in the NFC Championship game. But if you look back at his, draft in the draft process, whatever, he was a top 30 visit for the Colts. The Colts showed a lot of interest. I know there was a lot of links there between the Colts and Kevin King. And, he fits all the size parameters, 6'3", 220. He's a physical guy. Even though he's not a consistent tackler, he's willing to come up and make tackles. There's a lot of issues there. I'm not trying to say that he's a good corner by any means. He's not. But he's a guy who I think makes a lot of sense, where the Colts had a ton of interest in the past. He fits their size. He's a guy who they could rehabilitate. If he takes a 1-year pretty cheap deal, it might be smart for him too, because he can see like, hey, Xavier Rhodes turned around in this defense. If I take a 1-year small deal with them and they can get me up, if I can have a good year with them, then I can hit next year's market and get paid. So I think Kevin King makes a ton of sense. And again, it's a guy they've liked in the past, even though, again, if you're going to sign him, he can't be your starter next year. Like, you have to have a contingency plan, because going into next year, you can't have Kevin King and Rocky Stin be your two guys. But I think he makes sense as one of those like project, like rehabilitation type players.
I've had a lot of questions about that situation before. I've also had some questions when it comes to cornerbacks about Marvell Tell maybe coming in and possibly, if not becoming a starter, getting a lot of good snaps in, kind of the way TJ Carey came in. I'm sure you looked a lot at his film during his rookie year. What do you think of Marvell Tell?
I think it was a promising rookie year, especially for a 5th-round pick. I mean, considering he's former safety, switched to corner, and then he was kind of thrown into the fire a little bit with the Colts, and I thought he had a really strong rookie year. I think there were some issues with sticking on guys in man, but when he was in those zone coverages, I thought he looked really good. The issue is I'm kind of lumping him in the same boat as Paris Campbell, Kamoko Toure, Ben Banogu, where it's like, it's not that they're bad players. It's we can't count on them going into next year at the moment. You can't not go after an edge rusher because you have Banogu and Toure, because they haven't proven they can be those guys. You can't not go after a receiver because you have Paris Campbell, because he hasn't stayed healthy. You can't not go after certain corners because of Marvell Tell, because he didn't even play last year. So I hope he's great. I think he's going to be a good player. Like, I am fully confident in him coming in this next year and playing some productive snaps and looking good. But you can't just not pursue or go on the lower end of corner with the assumption that Marvell Tell is going to take this big step, because we just don't know right now. But I do think he's going to be a solid player. I'm excited for the progress that he hopefully made this past year, even though he wasn't on the field. I'm sure he was doing some training stuff and working out the whole offseason. So, I'm excited for him. I like this film, and I like that, he's a bigger corner who doesn't play small either. So I like him. All
right. Guys, if you're watching this, please, by the way, thanks for joining my stream here in the live chat. If you're watching, please hit that like button. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and there's a share button. You can share to your favorite social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, etc. Also, down in the description of the video is a direct links to where you could find Zach, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be his Stampede Blue page, whether it would be the Bleavin Colts. So make sure you check that out as well if you haven't already. And Colts freaks. Okay. James Smithson says Colts. Yeah, I'm a member of a couple Colts places. Colts freaks is one of those places that they welcome just about anyone to come in, but they are very blunt. Some of these guys will rip you a new one if you say something they don't like, but that is how it is. And so don't go in there with a really soft edge. But definitely go check them out, because there's a lot of guys in there that actually know exactly what they're talking about. It's funny, earlier you talked about how the simple thing about Kamoko Toure, Ben Bannock, I'm going to throw in the defensive end, Tyquan Lewis, in that same area where, do they have promise? Yes. Do I like the promise that they have? Yes, but they have yet to prove it. Mm-hmm. Same way with cornerback. Ballard since he's been here with the Colts, he has shown certain positions that he drafts very well at, and some that he's shown, there's a lack there, right? That he's still wanting more. Defensive line has been one of those, especially pass rusher, leaving you wanting more. Cornerback, leaving you wanting more. Now, safety, he seems like he does a pretty good job there. It seems like he does a pretty good job. Offensive line, running backs, linebacker, correct. So would you feel like he would attack the positions that he doesn't draft well in free agency like he did last year with DeForest Buckner over and then draft, like you say, left tackle this year? It seems, that's a position that he generally drafts very well at. Maybe he'll attack that in the draft. But since cornerback and pass rusher is a situation where he's not been very good at, that he'll most likely attack that harder in free agency.
I think to a degree. I mean, we've seen him be pretty aggressive when it comes to defensive line. The Buckner trade is one, but also, he spent quite a bit for Jonathan Hankins in his first year, spent quite a bit on Justin Houston in free agency. We know from conversations and from reports that have come out that he was in the final 2 or 3 teams for Preston Smith and for Za'Darius Smith back in 2018 as well. So he knows to attack pass rusher. He typically does do that. And same with corner. He's signed a corner every single year to play a big role. Xavier Rhodes, Pierre Desir was another guy. TJ Carey played a big role. So, he signs a lot of these guys as well. I don't know how much it really plays into it being I don't think he goes into it saying I don't know how to draft defensive linemen, so I'm going to sign a bunch. But I think it's more of, defensive line and corner are 2 premium positions when it comes to defense. So he takes as many shots as possible at those. And what we've seen with corner is, I know people will say he doesn't draft corner well. Rocky Sin's really the only one he spent real draft capital on. Nate Hairston and Marvell Tell were both day 3 picks. So he's only really spent the high draft capital on one of them, but he's drafted one every single year. Oh, and Isaiah Rodgers as well. So he's drafted one every single year. And then with defensive line, he does the same thing. I mean, he spends more premium picks on that defensive line, and those ones I think are more frustrating than maybe corner. But I just think he likes to take as many shots as possible at positions like that, especially defensive line, especially corner, because you just need to find guys who can play. And from that mindset, you find guys like Kenny Moore. Potentially, you find guys like Al-Qaeda Muhammad was, who gave him good snaps over the last couple of years. Not a high level player, but gave him good snaps. So, I think he's going to sign and go after guys like at those 2 positions. But I think it's more so because those are high value positions that you just want to take a lot of shots at.
Okay. As we get closer to free agency, March 17th, maybe even March 15th, where the tampering period comes into effect, you're going to be seeing a lot more people being released over and over. I mean, it's going to get crazy. And by the time that period hits, free agencies, I think, is going to be just filled to the brim with a whole bunch of players. Do you think, I'm of the opinion that Chris Ballard will probably kind of step back the first couple days because teams don't have that much money in general, this cap free agency. I think he's going to step back and watch the big names take a lot of money from some of those teams that have a lot of cap space. And then there's still going to be a lot of quality players, after that first initial rush. And I think that's where he might end up, making his magic happen, signing quality players at reasonable contracts, which to me seems like something that he would do, because seems like he's done it before. Where do you think that ends up going?
Yeah, I don't think it's anything in particular with just this year. Like you said, it's a weird year. It's a weird season. There's a lot of cuts. There's going to be less teams with cap space, but I don't think that changes Ballard's approach. Chris Ballard has always been, for every free agent we put a price number on. This is just completely example. This isn't a number they've put on anybody, but let's just say Kenny Golladay, they put an 18 million, they would go up to 18. They're not going to go that high, but just for example, we'll say here, they say Golladay is going to go to 18 and another team offers him 18.2. Ballard's not going to go above that. He's going to stay at that 18. He's always been that way. He's always been reserved. And agents hate it. Sometimes we hate it, but at the end of the day, he gets those bargains, and you get guys like Danico Autry, and you find those gems. But I don't think his like mindset changes at all according to this year either. I don't think he's going to be like a day one, I'm going to sign Galladay and Shaq Barrett. That's just not who he is. He's never really been that way. I think it's going to be, we'll check in on these guys, like they checked in on Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith years ago. And I think CJ Mosley as well, they checked in that year. They'll check in on those guys, but they won't set the market. They'll let the market play itself, and then they'll see where they want to go from there. And that's always what they do. And, at the end of the day, they usually find those bargains. Xavier Rhodes, Danico Autry, we can't complain too much, but I already know, the first couple of days, you and I, our mentions are going to be exploding. People saying Chris Ballard doing nothing while these other championship teams are signing away, especially when the Chiefs sign like someone good or whatever. It's like, oh, Chris Ballard doing nothing with all his cap space like usual. We'll get that. And then halfway through the season, we'll be like, oh, this guy he signed for $2 million is now a Pro Bowler. It's just kind of how it is. It's kind of what I expect. But, I think he will be kind of aggressive going after the edge rusher, especially in this free agency class. I just don't think he's going to get into any bidding wars. That's just not who he is.
So the Colts, from what I'm looking at, Spot Rack or OTC, they got about 46 million in cap space. You got to take about 6 million of that off to the side because you got to have the money to sign your draftees. And so that'll leave you around $40 million. Now, this year, we have, in my opinion, 3 very important guys that need to be extended before the season starts because I don't want to see them hit the open market next year, which would be Darius Leonard, Braden Smith, Naheem Hines. Do you think that those extensions, because he could legitimately put some money like this year, some of this year's cap as a prorated bonus on an extension like that, do you think that would play into any kind of effect of how much he might end up being spending this year in free agency?
Yeah, I think it does play a bit of an effect. Kind of to, I guess, somewhat contrast what you said there, because I do agree with you. I'd preferably sign all 3 of them before the season starts. Ultimately, I think with the 2 big name guys, you only need to sign one of them before the year starts. So it could be Braden Smith, you give him his big contract extension, or you go up to, Darius Leonard's. I think it's more likely you would extend Smith than Leonard because Leonard is going to set the market at linebacker. But you only need to extend one of them because the other one, worst case scenario, you can give the franchise tag to next year. You don't want it to come down to that, obviously, but as long as you extend one of those 2 guys, the other one you can have that kind of like safety net there for them. Naeem Hines, I'm with you. I want him extended before the year as well, but we'll see where that goes. I don't think he's going to go anywhere, but we'll see. But yeah, I think it does play into future years, and I think it plays more into the Colts wanting to go 1 or 2 year deals with a lot of these guys in free agency. Maybe they go up a little higher on like an edge rusher and they give him like a 3 or 4, but they won't give a guy a big contract for many years because their cap's not going to be great here in a couple of years. Like you mentioned earlier, Braden Smith, tons of money might be going his way. And I think you said 12 million. I could see that getting up to like 16 or 17 even.
Wow.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if Jack Conklin hit the market last year, I think he got like 16, I believe, or 7. His might have been 17. And, personally for me, I don't think Conklin's better than Braden Smith. I think Conklin's fine. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's better than Braden Smith personally. And maybe that's my bias, but tackles get all the money when they hit the market. And if he's thinking, if I hit the market, I get a lot. I don't know Braden Smith's, mindset with it, but he could be getting up somewhere 16, 17. Darius Leonard's going to set the market at linebacker. Quentin Nelson's going to set the market at not even offensive guard. He's going to set it at offensive lineman, I think, because, 3 All-Pros in 3 years. I mean, you can ask for pretty much anything you want at that point. So yeah, I think they're not going to have a ton of money going forward in the future. I think Ballard knows that. And he's been, that's probably one of the reasons why he's been frugal throughout his whole time here with Indy, because he knows like, hey, these studs I drafted, I'm going to have to pay them eventually. And he loves to keep his homegrown guys. That's always been his big thing. The guys who come up through the Colts, he likes to extend them early and give them contracts. I mean, Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore, guys that he's got those extensions on early. So yeah, I think it does play a factor. That's why, when some people are projecting like, go get Shaq Barrett, go get Kenny Galladay, go get Trent Williams. You know, we have so many big contracts coming up that it's hard to really get into any bidding wars for these top guys because, you know, you have to worry about that future cap.
Yeah, I'm back before he got franchise tag. Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was my favorite free agent. Watching his film, just like, wow, this guy can run routes, man, like a crazy person. And I was just like, he's going to get $20 million if he gets an extension. He's easily. And there is no way on God's green earth I could see Ballard giving a wide receiver $20 million a year. I mean, as good as Robinson is, and while I believe he deserves that kind of money, I just don't see Ballard doing something like that at all. It's funny you bring up the franchise tag. I completely forgot about it, frankly, because Ballard don't use franchise tags, but that's still a weapon that he has in his arsenal to help with the cap space. And I'm glad you brought it up because now I could honestly, I believe you. I think that is a situation, especially with, I think you're right. I think you got to sign Leonard first because he is going to set that market. I don't think Braden Smith is a market setting kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so you could tag Braden, but if you wait too long with Darius Leonard, someone else will set that market, and then Darius Leonard's going to get even more money. So yes, I completely agree with you on that. And then I have to remind people all the time, fifth-year option on Nelson, so don't even worry about that right now.
Yeah. He's not someone you worry about yet because fifth-year option, I think we'll get him, I think $13 million next year, or not this upcoming year, but the year after, which I'm sure he won't complain about, even though he's worth more than that. So you have 2 more years of control over him. Like you don't need to extend him yet, and definitely put off giving him that contract. You know, get to the later years of the Buckner contract, the later years of the Wentz contract before you open up checkbook for Quentin Nelson. You know, you don't want every single contract to overlap at once because then you'll have to make crucial cuts or restructures and get all that dead cap in the future. And that's how you end up like the Eagles and end up like the Saints and all those other teams that are in cap hell right now.
Yeah, that's another beautiful thing you bring up. If I remember right, currently, I don't think the Colts have a dead cap right now. They did have a very small one last year. Let me look at this.
I don't think I'm trying to think of anyone who would have contributed to the dead cap, but I don't think because who they cut? They haven't cut anybody in like a year. They cut this year, but this year they put into his contract to have that out to where it was 0 in dead cap. So I don't think.
Okay. So we do have $255,000 in dead cap. Okay.
Well, you know who that might have been from? Who is the Niners guy that we signed this past year going into the season? The Niners rotational defensive tackle.
Oh, tackle. Okay. Actually, I thought we had 2 of them.
Besides Buckner.
No, I'm talking besides Buckner. We had.
He was from Notre Dame. He was the Notre Dame guy. Sheldon Day.
Sheldon Day. Yep.
Yeah. So it might have been him because his contract was like $1.5 million, I think, on the market. So they might have had a little dead cap from cutting him. But that's the only one I can think of.
Okay. All right. Because there was another one too, and I can't remember his name as well. Let me scroll down here because daggone it. Sorry guys, I know I'm live and you're sitting here listening to me. If you're listening to this on Taylor Stallworth.
Oh, Stallworth, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure he was a Niner as well. So I mean, 3 Niner defensive linemen, wasn't it?
Maybe. I don't remember Stallworth, but he I don't doubt you. He could have definitely played there. He's been around the league a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
They already gave him a 1-year extension, though. He's already coming back.
Yeah. All right. So we've spent 40 minutes sitting there going over conversations. It's time to go into the live chat because I really extended that. King J, who is a Patriots guy, but that's fine because I have a few Patriots guys that come in here. He says for the Colts, he would draft an edge first and then address offensive tackle in free agency. Sign John Brown, draft wide receiver in the later rounds. Levi Wallace. What do you think of Levi Wallace?
I like Levi. Levi is a guy who I loved at Alabama, but he was so weird as a prospect because I think he was like 6'1", but like 179 or something. But he was a pass breakup machine. just that size was terrifying, and that's why he slipped to day 3. And he put together a pretty good career with the Bills, so I'd be all for that. I think he's restricted though, so we'll have to see what happens with that. The Bills have kind of spent a lot of money these last couple of days, so we'll see. But my only issue with that, I actually really like everything he said there, would be just the mindset of draft edge round 1. You can't go into the draft with, we need to come out of the first round with a certain position. That's just not how the draft works, unfortunately. You have to have guys at each, not each position, but you have to have a certain set of guys. The way that most NFL teams do it, I don't know how common knowledge this is. I feel like it's got out there quite a bit with the first pick and what the Bills do and all that stuff. Is teams, they have like a block of like blue players. They sometimes call it different, but blue players that you would take in the first, and then you have a next block that you would take in the second. Next, all these blocks of players. And by the time your first round pick comes, you're picking from that pool up there in the first. And then if your second round pick comes and there's still guys up in that first, you go up there, even if it's a position that you don't necessarily need. And, I'm sure that's what Chris Ballard did, for instance, when we took like Julian Blackmon last year. Julian Blackmon wasn't really a position of need, but he probably valued Julian Blackmon as a much higher player than where he went. So, you can't really go into a first round or even a second, any of these top couple rounds thinking we need this position. It's which player is going to help my team the most, who's the most impact player. So that's my only issue with that. Sign John Brown, sign Levi Wallace. I'm all for. I like both those guys a lot.
Yeah, I think another guy would be Jonathan Taylor. The reason why they even moved up a little bit in the draft, because he's like, really, he dropped this low. I want him, and can't argue with that at all. Alex Castillo, I've been getting killed on Colts groups all day saying Corey Davis is not a good route runner. Now, I did a film room on Corey Davis for another channel, and I was watching Corey Davis run routes, and it wasn't good. There was routes where he would take 8 yards to make an in cut, and actually run into another wide receiver that was making another one, on the opposite end. And I'm like, really? And there was a throw to him, but it was way too short. He took too long to make this cut on the outside. And I've seen that over and over and over. He doesn't use that, that short, quick chop that you use with your feet in order to slow down and make a quick turn. He doesn't use that almost ever, from what I'm noticing from him. Whereas some of your better route runners know how to make those quick stops and turns. I don't see that from Corey Davis so much, but I want your opinion. Where do you rank Corey Davis?
Yeah, so I like Corey Davis. I think I would, I'm tend to agree with you. I'm not saying that route running is definitely his game. I think, when it comes to route running, there's two types. There's precise route runners, and there's still, you can still be a good route runner without being a precise route runner. A great example, which maybe you guys will disagree. I think T.Y. Hilton is a good route runner. I don't think he's very precise. A lot of his routes are rounded off, but he can get away with that because he's so fast. You can round off routes if you are threatening with the speed. Corey Davis doesn't threaten enough with speed to kind of round off his routes. So yeah, I don't think route running is necessarily a strong point in his game. I like his release game a lot. I think he releases well off the line. I saw him kill Rock Ya-Sin a couple times, even beat Xavier Rhodes a couple times with his release game. Then I also think he's good down the field as well. So I like Corey Davis. I don't like him at the price point he's going to be at. And I don't think Chris Ballard will either, because, as more receivers get signed, Allen Robinson off the market, Chris Godwin off the market, Corey Davis just moves up a couple tiers, and I don't think Chris Ballard will go there.
One thing I do like about Corey Davis is I feel like he's a fearless receiver. He will go after a football knowing he's about to take a hit, So I don't have a problem with that. And he's a more than willing blocker in the run game. So, that's a plus, especially for a team like the Colts that, want to run first. So let's see. Let's go on through here. Jay, another question. Mitchell Schwartz. I don't know who Mitchell Schwartz is.
The right tackle from the Chiefs.
Yeah, duh, I'm stupid. I had a brain fart. My bad.
So
it happens.
Jay, I will say Schwartz is probably closer to retirement than being a starting tackle again in the NFL. His back was really bad last year. I'm fortunate enough to be really close with the Arrowhead Pride guys. We talk all the time. I don't. It would actually kind of shock me at this point if Schwartz plays another snap. I know he's getting back surgery I know he's getting back surgery here pretty soon to kind of try to clean it up. But yeah, his back's bad. He's an older player too. I don't know if that would be a fit for the Colts. And I think he's almost always played on the right side his whole career too. So it's just I don't really see that fit really for the Colts personally.
Okay. Don't know cue ball, but welcome to my stream. Thanks for joining. John Davis, what's going on? Ant Rogers, one of my regulars as well. Chris Troger, Colts Nation, obviously. So let's go into some more questions. I think you already answered this already. Eric, no, you haven't. Eric Fisher, do you think he's an option?
So Eric Fisher, the second he got cut, I got excited because I was like, okay, cool. This, Ballard connection. Ballard took him in the first, for help take him first overall a couple years ago. Made a lot of sense. The problem is he's coming off a torn Achilles that happened in the AFC Championship game. So he's going to miss most of this next season. At best case, you're going to get him late November, early December. For me, I don't even know why he would sign before that. If I were him personally, I would, take that time to kind of rehabilitate. And then when you get close to December, someone's going to be calling for your services if you're healthy. So again, it doesn't really fix the Colts tackle problem by signing him because he's going to be out for most of this next season. I mean, he's recovering from a torn Achilles. That's a huge recovery. Torn Achilles is right up there. I think it's probably now harder to recover than from an ACL at this point because we've come so far in recovery with ACLs. So yeah, I just don't see that signing being a solution. I could definitely see the Colts signing him just because of that Ballard connection, maybe on like a prove it type 2-year type thing, but he's not going to play much this year. So I just don't think it fixes anything.
Okay. Ant Rogers brings up a question. He thinks that Dupree is light to play 4-3, but he's almost 270 pounds. He just don't look it.
He weighs more than Houston.
Yes. More, so I mean, it's odd. He carries that weight very, very well, but he don't look it when you look at him on the edge. I do think that Dupree's going to end up asking for quite a bit of money, though. I think he's going to be one of those day 1, day 2 free agency guys that's going to get paid some money. Not as much as Barrett, but some cash. Let's walk in here. What else we got here? Colts Nation, I don't think that we need a wide receiver much because if Campbell stays healthy and we reset him. Okay, first off, you just threw up 2 big question marks, right? We can't really rely on Paris Campbell, in my opinion. I love him when he is healthy. I think he is absolutely dynamic when he is healthy. But he has yet to prove that he can stay healthy. And T.Y., we don't know what's going on with him. So I think we do need receiver. I just don't think we need a big-bodied number 1 receiver. I think we need a guy that could fill a Campbell/T.Y. role. What style receiver do you think the Colts should be going after?
Yeah, I think they need a veteran who can be productive, this next year. I don't think it needs to particularly be, I think you kind of have your big body role with Pittman. If you still believe in Campbell, you do have that explosive element, but you can't rely on him filling that role because you don't know if he'll stay healthy for a whole year. You have your reliable receiver in Zach Pascal. So I think you need to go with a good athlete, explosive type guy, a guy who can kind of stretch the field, not necessarily fill the T.Y. role because T.Y. hasn't necessarily been that field stretcher for like 2 years now, but a guy who can open things up for your offense. So a guy like John Brown makes a lot of sense. And even if you don't want to go that level of speed, go for a guy like Keelan Cole, who is a really good route runner, underneath guy, tough guy over the middle, can fill inside or out. I think there's a lot of options in this draft or in this free agency, but I'm kind of with you. I don't think you need to go, a guy who I keep throwing out there. It's like a Kenny Golladay. You don't need to go up to what he's going to make in this free agency because honestly, the Colts haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver. They haven't had a guy over 700 yards receiving in the last 2 years. Their offense doesn't really go through one guy. So I think that I don't want to go like super low, but like a mid-tier type guy, I think makes a lot of sense.
I think Curtis Samuel makes a lot of sense when it comes to schematic wise offensively, but only if he's not one of those guys that get signed early in free agency so that his price tag isn't way up there. And I think, in my opinion, if you can get Samuel for 11, 12 million a year, I think that's a good deal. What are your thoughts on Samuel?
Yeah, that price tag, I'd absolutely love him. Actually, personally for me, if I were a GM at the 15 or 16 that he's probably going to get, I'd still love him. I don't know if Ballard would go that high for him, but yeah, Curtis Samuel, I'm a huge fan of. I hope he doesn't end up in Jacksonville of all places, but he's so good. Great after the catch. He would have had, imagine how many yards he would have had in 2019 if they had a competent quarterback, or even 2020 this past year if they had a competent quarterback. So, yeah, I hope he ends up in a good place. I don't think it'll be Indy, and I hope it's not Jacksonville.
Yeah, I heard you sitting there talking about Jacksonville. Jacksonville's offense. Everybody wants to trash Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got a very potent arrangement of dynamic receivers out there. I heard you talking about how much you liked Keelan Cole on your podcast, and I think Laviska Shenault is a dynamic. I think Chark's
really good.
Really good. Yeah. So, if Curtis Samuel ended up going over there and Trevor Lawrence is there, oh my goodness, that's nasty. With James Robinson at the running back, yes, their defense is going to be like Swiss cheese, but they'll be the Arizona Cardinals of 2021. You know what I'm saying?
8-8, here we come.
8-8. Let's see what else we got going on down here in the chat. If anyone has any specific questions for Zach, please put them in here because I got Zach for another 9 minutes ish. So, good edge. Oh yeah. Here's the re-signed Danico Autry. A good edge in free agency to keep our own is all we need. Who would you prefer if the Colts keep on the edge if they kept just one guy on defensive end, Houston or Autry?
Oh, I'd go Autry. I think Autry was more consistent overall last year. Houston just hasn't been. Houston's been an adequate run defender in his time with Indy, but it never was anything amazing. And as a pass rusher, it was just so inconsistent. It was either, it was like 2 or 3 rushes a game. He looked like the best pass rusher like in the league for 2 to 3 rushes a game, but if he's not getting pressure on those or he's not getting a sack, there's no production coming out of that game from Justin Houston. Where Autry, I think, is a really good run defender. He can play inside or out, very strong hands, and he can still collapse the pocket. He just doesn't have any juice on the outside at all. So I think he's a very valuable player. I just think his market's going to be very, very aggressive. If I'm a team like the Bills or a team like the Chiefs or like any kind of contending team who needs just a quality guy on the inside who can kind of push the pocket and be a good run defender, I'm going for Autry. And, I think there was a Bills report that came out this week that the Bills are going to be heavily interested in him. So, yeah, I don't see him coming back because I think his market's going to get really high. But if it were up to me personally, I prefer Autry over Houston coming back.
Okay. I think I prefer Autry too, but I think his price is going to be one of those situations. Yeah. Same way with, I would love to have Anthony Walker back. I think Anthony Walker's going to get paid this offseason. So I think he's going to go to a team that really needs a solid run-stopping middle linebacker that can take control of a defense the way he does with the Colts, and they're gonna give him some money. Yeah. Colts Nation, trade back with the Jets for the 2nd and 3rd and get Jalen Phillips. First off, I just want to say I like Jalen Phillips. I don't think he's going to be there in the 2nd round.
Only if the injury history terrifies a team because I don't know how many people know this, but Jalen Phillips was forced into retirement by UCLA back in 2018 because he hit the 5 concussion rule that they have, where if a player hits 5 concussions, the school kind of makes them retire. So that's why he ended up transferring to Miami, because they were kind of forcing him into retirement for his own health and well-being. That's why they do it. So it depends on how much that scares teams. And I know, concussions are something that's, a terrifying thing right now when it comes to the NFL. So I think that's the only way he would fall out of the 1st, but he's so talented, man. Like, he's so nuanced, so developed, a very polished pass rusher who just threatens so many different ways. I don't see him falling out of the 1st. There's too much desperation for pass rushers in today's game for him to kind of fall out of the 1st round.
I think a lot of those concussions also had to do with the fact that he was in a vehicle accident on his scooter, and he got hit by a car, right? And then that jumbled him up, and then he got concussions after that. I think over the past couple years, I think his health has came back. I don't think it's going to be as much as of a problem as what you were talking about, but I understand that that could be something that would worry teams and push them away, but I just don't see it. I really do see him being a first-round talent. I don't even know if he'll be there at 21 when the Colts pick there. I see him because defensive end pass rusher, it's not a very deep, high-quality draft this year. Offensive line, yes. Tackle, yes. But not defensive end pass rusher. I just don't see that.
Honestly, I don't think it's a very high-end class in general, but maybe it's just because I'm an asshole when I grade prospects. I don't think it's a super high-end class. Like, I don't think there's much top-tier talent. And I think, if you're picking in the 20s, like, why not take a shot on Phillips? Injury history be damned. He's a really good player. So I don't see him falling out of even the 20s, but we'll see. But, I don't like being like those big media guys where it's like, this will never happen, because we've seen so many things that'll never happen actually happen come draft day. So we'll definitely see, but I don't see him falling out of the first.
Yeah, I don't either. Troger, no Braden at left tackle. You gotta remember, Braden started off as a guard and then went to right tackle. In my opinion, you don't want to move that guy around, especially from right to left after he's gotten that right tackle position solidified. I think that has a potential of messing him up. So, what are your thoughts?
I personally don't think left tackle is that much more important than right tackle to make that move make sense. Like, I don't want to flip this guy's entire footwork around and change up. He's built chemistry on the right side, playing from the right side, built chemistry with Glowinski. Maybe if you have a whole offseason where you're really working on it, he could do it, but then you have a big hole at right tackle. So it doesn't fix anything. I would rather start Will Holden at left tackle than move Braden over to left, because again, all you're doing, like, let's say Braden is a 9 out of 10 on the right side, and you currently have 0 out of 10 on left tackle. Moving Braden over, you have maybe an 8 out of 10 on the left side. You still have a 0 out of 10 on the right. So all you did was make your overall line a little bit worse and still have a need on the offensive line. So it never made sense to me. Maybe I just don't think right tackle and left tackle are that vastly different. Like, yeah, obviously blind side's important, but today's NFL, you have great pass rushers on both sides. Braden Smith this past year went against T.J. Watt, Yannick Ngakoue, Matt Judon was over him, J.J. Watt went over him, Khalil Mack early in the season. Like, he's actually getting a lot of the great pass rushers. So I'd rather keep him on the right side. I don't see the point in moving him.
I don't see. I understand the thought process of moving Quentin Nelson to left tackle. I don't like the idea. Because Quentin Nelson is so valuable at that left guard, especially with the fact that, he's used so much in the run game in the pulling aspect as well. And if you move him to left tackle, that kind of adjusts how often you can actually pull him when you're running towards the right, because you need someone at left tackle to cut off the pursuit dude on the defensive end. So I don't like you putting him at left tackle just because of the run game.
Yeah, I think it's a good, worst case scenario, we move Quentin Nelson over. I think that makes sense. But yeah, I don't think if your main plan is moving him, I don't think that makes sense at all. Like I said, I think the best option is just getting a veteran guy to start there for you, even if it's someone like James Hurst from New Orleans or Roderick Johnson. I'd rather just start one of those guys than move Quentin Nelson over. But say free agency completely fizzles out, you can't get anybody good, then the draft, it just doesn't fall the way you want. Very, very worst case scenario, you can move Quentin Nelson over and get quality tackle play. So I understand it from that perspective, but making that like your main option, I'm not for that at all.
Now, I saw your list you had over there on Twitter, and you are not a Haig fan.
I loved Haig in Indy. It's just, if you watched him last year at all, because he filled in at tackle a couple times, right tackle and left tackle, it was not good whatsoever. Maybe coming back to Indy would be great, but I just didn't see a quality player when I watched him when he took snaps last year. So yeah, if it's like a really small deal, sure, I'd be okay with it. But I wouldn't feel like left tackle got properly addressed if he's your starter going into next year.
Patriots guy, what's up, scared? Cam Newton MVP. He just signed a 1-year, $14 million extension. I know this isn't Colts, but give me your thoughts on that when you first seen that happen.
I actually like it. 1-year deals I don't care much about. I kind of said it back when the Colts signed Funchess a couple years ago. For 1 year, you can give a guy whatever because it doesn't matter. It's coming off the books after a year. I think Cam Newton was better than what the stats say last year. I don't think he was by any means great, but I do think he was not like completely awful like his stats would say. And again, the Patriots had no weapons on that offense. That offense was atrocious. Julian Edelman got hurt. Because I think it was week 3. They were on the fringe of being 3-0. Cam got COVID. The offensive line got hurt. Julian Edelman got hurt. And then he came back and he just wasn't the same. The offense wasn't the same. And it all kind of just derailed from there. I think that warranted another look. And I don't think it's actually going to even get up to 14. I think it's a 1-year, $5 million deal with, if he gets like certain things, it can get up to 14. But it's actually a 1-year, $5 million deal. And at that, 100%, I would take Cam back. So, yeah, I think it was a smart move on their part. And it doesn't stop them from drafting a guy in this class either. So they could still move up and get someone. Yeah, I like it for them. I like it for them.
That's what I said in my tweet. I was like, the Cam Newton signing does not mean that they're not going to draft someone in the first round. I almost think it almost guarantees that they're going to sign someone because they're going with a guy who already knows the system for a 1-year deal. If Cam works out, great, they can extend him. If not, they already went out and got somebody in the draft. I see them still going for somebody in the first round. I doubt that Mac Jones drops as far as 15 for him, but they might get somebody else, or who knows? Maybe Bill Belichick moves up. Who knows? Speaking of Mac Jones, do you think he makes it out of the top 10 this year?
I think he could be out of the top 10. We're seeing a trend in recent NFL where it's, the kind of the lean towards improvisational type quarterbacks, guys who can kind of create a bit. And even with Joe Burrow, where Joe Burrow didn't have a ton of physical ability, if you watch this game, he doesn't have the greatest arm, doesn't have all this stuff, but he knew how to create and he knew how to be super accurate underneath. Mac Jones is an accurate quarterback, smart quarterback, moves really well in the pocket. I like a lot of things about his game, but he's not an athletic thrower. He doesn't kind of create out of the pocket. He's not going to create for your offense. He kind of needs everything to kind of be in place and be good. Now, I think he can be a quality starter in this league, but I think in the top 10, teams are going to take those shots. They're going to take those high-end shots. Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence will go first. So I think those are going to be the guys they focus on the top 10. But I Mac Jones, if he goes in the top 15, top 20, wouldn't shock me at all because you're going to get a quality guy, I think, out of him. It's just, if you're a GM, you can sell yourself on being, getting an adequate guy if that's the ceiling. But it's hard. I guess it's kind of hard to sell a fan base on like this guy's potential is, solid. This is what we're getting with this guy. You want to aim higher, essentially. So, it's a tough situation, but I do like Mac Jones. I think he's going to be a quality guy in the league.
All right, so I'm going to take one last question. I've got it already lined up, but before you answer that, because we're now past the 1 hour mark. I really appreciate you joining me, Zach. This was a great Q&A. I think we actually agreed a lot more than what I expected that we would.
Yeah, we got to fight next time. We gotta bring our hot takes ready next time.
Right. I did have the hot take earlier in the season that I would not be against trading the first round pick for Marshawn Lattimore and doing that. So, I think that would be a situation very similar to what the Colts did with the Niners. The Saints need cap space. They're probably not going to be able to extend Lattimore. I think trading the 21st pick for him and extending him would be a great move for the Colts. I really do believe, but I'm not going to, unless you want to answer that, go ahead. Otherwise, why don't you go ahead, give a little information about yourself, let everybody know what you're doing, where they can find you, and then You can answer this question afterwards.
Okay, so yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Zach Hicks 2. I'm pretty active on there, so I get a ton of questions and stuff on there, so I'll try to answer if you guys ever send me stuff. But I'm fairly active on there at Zach Hicks 2. I work for Stampede Blue. A lot of articles this year, a lot of prospect interviews. Just to even preview one of them, I have one posting with Rondell Moore next week, which I know if you guys are Colts fans in the chat, you probably all love Rondell Moore if you're in Indy. So I do have a Rondell Moore interview going up next week. That's going to be a really good piece, I think. And then also with Cover One, I'm doing some draft stuff, and also Bleavin Colts. Me and Jake got a good thing going there. But yeah, I appreciate any of you guys following. This was a blast. Love jumping on with Lawrence here. And, obviously we don't always agree, but that's the beauty of it all. But favorite Colts memory. It's funny. I always tell people I didn't grow up a Colts fan. I never grew up a Colts fan. But I followed them a little bit because Peyton Manning, I was a little kid. Peyton Manning, one of the best in the league. And crazy enough, he shares the same birthday as me. We have the same birthday. So wow. I was, when you're a little kid, you think that's so crazy. So he becomes your favorite player. So Peyton Manning was my favorite player growing up. And it was probably just seeing them win the Super Bowl. I think that was just the best, I actually like the Bears that year too, because I always loved defense, but seeing them win the Super Bowl is definitely up there. But probably the moment that got me the craziest, I will say, and it's actually from this past year, and it's probably my favorite memory, is when the Colts were playing against the Raiders, and a certain corner that I really love, my favorite player in all of football right now, Kenny Moore, goes up and snags it with one hand. I think that's my favorite Colts memory right now.
Wow. Real quick, which catch do you think is better? That catch or the one Mo Alley Cox did in the back of the end zone? Yeah.
I think you have to go with Kenny on that. Like, as Kenny's was, you're in the red zone. The Raiders were driving for the second straight time against Darren Waller too. And Kenny's 5'8", skying up there. Mo's 6'5", 6'6", or whatever, like going up for his. And Mo's was an outstanding catch. Mo's was freaky, but Kenny Moore, that vertical he got on it, the screen grab of it was so nice too. Like, yeah, Kenny Moore's I think was so much nicer.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining again, guys. Don't forget, smash that like button, hit subscribe, share my channel, and make sure you follow Zach everywhere he is at. Go check that stuff out in the description of the video. And until next time, I'm Lawrence Owen with Zach Hicks. This was Colts Law, and as usual, have a good one.
All right. So I guess now you understand what the plan was.
Absolutely. At Colts Law, we talk Indianapolis Colts football.
We're going to stick to what we know, fundamentals and technique, 1% better every day.